I have believed from the jump that Joe Biden will be the nominee. Yesterday, when that COVID diagnosis came out, was announced by the White House, for the first time, I questioned myself. I said, this is it. This is the off-ramp. He does an interview. He says, if I was told medically that there was an issue, then I would consider dropping out or whatever. 2 hours later, or 24 hours later, I have COVID. I must go back to Delaware and hang out. Seth Denson, is this the off-ramp?
I thought it was. I said this to some folks on my team. This is the beginning of the walkaway Joe. This is the ability now to navigate and say complications from COVID have caused X, Y, and Z. And I do not feel that I can provide the country the best version of me going forward. I pass the mantle. This is the path if they want to take it. They now have it. And it's not a great path for them, but it is a path, and this could be it.
All right, Sarah, I don't know what CDC says today. What is it, 4 days, 5 days, something? If you test this and you stood next to somebody who has an odd-numbered house and you have to quarantine without a mask for 4, I don't know what CDC guidelines are today, but the reason I bring it up is I think that's how much time he got bought. He can go to Delaware, he can quarantine for 3 to 5 days and legitimately claim that he's recovering from COVID. That's it. Once that clock expires, though, he can't hide in Delaware anymore. And I think this is where they've got it. The rubber has to meet the road. You're either taking the off-ramp or you're staying. What do you think they do while they're in Delaware?
Oh, I think you're absolutely right. This is only time that they've bought. They, of course, have not figured things out. And I think that they're going to spend their time trying to convince Jill Biden to pull her husband. Because if I'm being honest, obviously, Joe is half dead. I mean, we're all watching him deteriorate before our very eyes. And I don't for one second think that he is behind the push to keep him up there. I do think that Jill is convincing him that everything's okay. She loves the power. She loves the control. We just saw her on, Vogue magazine in like a $7,000 suit on the front page, which, by the way, Melania never got invited to, a literal supermodel. So I do think that a lot of this convincing right now in the time that they've bought is going to be spent trying to convince Jill, trying to convince Hunter, because these are the same family members that we heard in reports a few weeks ago who are convincing him, you can do this. You're fine. You're totally fine. You can do this. But I agree with you. I mean, it's just time that they've bought. It's a very little amount of time. And there's no indication that they have made any headway when we're reading Joe Biden's statements that he keeps releasing, digging in his heels. So I just don't know this is the only off-ramp that they're going to have.
Yes. That's it. It's like God just said to you, here you go. You want to take it? Next one. It's like those rest stops on the Jersey Turnpike. Next rest stop, 35 miles. Do you have enough gas? You better pull over now. I think, Wesley, the thing that was the other tell for me is that the DNC has been talking about this virtual roll call that they need to conduct. There were reports they wanted to do it as early as July 24th. Yesterday, they sent out a memo to all the members of the Rules Committee of the DNC and said, it's not going to happen until at least August 1st. They pushed it back, buying themselves more time. That's another tell that they're trying to get it together and let Joe have some breathing room.
Yeah, first off, let's not belittle this COVID thing. I mean, although COVID was overblown for most people, it's still a very, very serious illness for people that have underlying health conditions and people who are elderly. So, I mean, he is a man, as Sarah said, who is already half dead. Now he has COVID. So let's actually pray for President Biden and hope that this isn't very, very serious, because it could very well be. But going back to the earlier point, look, for years and years and years, it's been very frustrating as a political consultant who helps run races across the country to have the Republican Party completely tearing itself apart, ripping itself apart. We're killing ourselves from within, and the Democrats have just sat back and watched us and let us destroy ourselves. This is the time we need to be doing the same exact thing. And that's exactly, going back to your earlier point about that statement, that's what La Savita and Susie Wiles seems to be doing and advising President Trump to do. Let's just do what they've done for the last 10 years. Let's just sit back and watch them destroy themselves. So when you're talking about, changing the timing for these votes, the longer they push it out, the longer the media is going to focus on them tearing each other apart. We could just sit back. We could be unified. We can start to actually win, not just the White House, but let's not forget, guys, we got to take back the United States Senate too. So the longer this narrative goes on, it's not just Joe Biden that is hurting. It's hurting John Tester. It's hurting Tammy Baldwin. It's hurting Sherrod Brown. So not only are we going to be able to take back the White House if this continues, but also the United States Senate.
By the way,
Yeah, I think
to
it's
Wesley's
important.
point, Sean, real quick,
Yeah.
to Wesley's point, it goes full circle back to the unity of the Republican Party. That's why I made the comment about if George W. Bush came, because it does show we know how vocal he was that he was not for Trump being the nominee in the past. But the second piece is, let's not forget to the point you just made, which is Democrats gave us the blueprint. Biden won in his basement last time. And so doing nothing sometimes is doing something. And so the Republicans, if they just sit back and do nothing here, let the Democrats have to roll them out.
Yeah, I agree. Wesley, I want you just, because as a person that's been involved in party operations, the one thing that I keep saying to folks is they act like somehow logistically this is easy. And I talk to Democrats who are in the know, like they're like, oh, well, we'll figure it out. We'll have 5 mini town halls and then we'll vote electronically and everyone will get on Zoom and pick a nominee. This is not how that works. And this, I mean, we haven't had a party convention of that sort since 68, 72. Like, it's been 50 years. And I think that this idea that logistically this can just happen in 4 days in Chicago is ridiculous. And that's the thing that I don't think that people who haven't been around the party infrastructure fully appreciate, that it's not there anymore. People go, well, England does this all the time. Yeah, England knows how to do it. That's their thing. Like, you know what I mean? It's like anything else in the world. There are people who practice things, they know how to do them because they're routine. We don't do this. And so if the Dems do it, I just think logistically, this is a nightmare for them.
Sometimes my wife and I fight for an hour trying to figure out what we're going to have for dinner at night, right? So imagine we can't even coordinate where we're going for food. Imagine you've got hundreds, even thousands of people trying to coordinate delegates and state parties and the details of a convention. This is not something that could just be easily done overnight. This takes a lot of planning.
Yes.
And just trying to get a lot of those many people on the same page is an absolute disaster. So this is
Seth,
as hard as it gets.
Yeah, we're talking about how great the RNC is. It was years of preparation, the planning, the logistics, the videos, the people. They didn't just show up in Milwaukee. They were vetted. They flew in. They had speeches. And to Wesley's point, Seth Denson, I'm like, this isn't just like, all right, everybody convene in Chicago and we'll take a number. Those who support Kamala get on the right side. Those who support, I mean, this is a recipe for massive disaster. And I think that, look, I'm not looking to give the Dems any help here, but I think that this idea of, oh, we'll just tell Joe to step aside or he'll willingly do it, and then we'll, Katie, kind of hope that things don't go wrong is insane.
Yeah, Robert's Rules of Order could have a serious comeback here in a few weeks in the event that something changes here. I mean, we're going back.
Do you think that a bunch of progressives are like, let's hold on when we get back from that Gaza rally, let's look at what Robert's Rules of Order says the next thing is.
Well, now they have the tip, right? Now they can go Google it. No, but to your point, this would be, listen, in fairness, not to draw back to, we're a week past. I thought that the Republican National Convention was about to head that direction. I mean, a millimeter to the right, and we would be in a very different position. So thank the good Lord above that that's not the case. And so this is, again, why I lean in that I think I'm still on the camp that it's going to be Joe because there's just nowhere else to go.
Okay, Sarah, if it's not Joe, I have maintained I don't see in the Democratic Party of today identity politics, progressive policies, how you say to the first black female vice president, could you step aside so we can get the white dude with good hair from California to come in?
I agree with you. And that's something that I've been saying all along is that it's obvious that they want it to be Gavin and it's obvious that he wants it to be him. I mean, just look at the television ads he was running in Florida, trying to convince Floridians that it was way more free over here in the commie state of California. And so, but I agree. How do you get there? What are the optics to trying to all of a sudden, you've touted this woman as the DEI VP. And now all of a sudden, and by the way, DEI is the most important factor in every conversation to them. And now all of a sudden, you're going to toss her to the side and throw her, off the bus so that you can put another white man in charge. I know that that's what they want, but I don't see how they get there.
Yeah, and let me say this, John, real quick, too. I think that sometimes we underestimate Kamala Harris. She has made a very big political career out of strategic political moves, and Gavin, beware. if you try to step over her, i.e. Willie Brown Jr.,
Oh. I agree. Look, here's what I would say to this. I think $100 million. Wesley, you tell me. You spend a ton of money doing this with candidates. $100 million of Hollywood money. I think we know Kamala Harris. People who watch the show know Kamala Harris. The average person walking down the street in Charleston or Dallas or Providence, Rhode Island, or Alexandria, Virginia, or Bozeman, Montana, it says, I think I know who she is. But $100 million of Hollywood money to make her over into something else is not something that we know who our candidate is in Joe Biden. We know his record. Everyone knows Joe Biden. They know his record. I think you could do a lot to remake her with $100 million, Wesley.
We spent $100 million getting Lindsey Graham elected in the state of South Carolina, and almost that in Herschel Walker's race in Georgia. So $100 million doesn't go as far as it used to, Sean. So no,
right,
I don't think, whatever I know you're just pulling that number out. So I don't know what the number is. But look, I just don't think they have the time. I don't think they have the financial resources right now. To Sarah's point, I don't see how you take a black woman off. No, they don't have the time. They're stuck with Biden. I just don't see a path, man. I've been thinking through this nonstop, and I don't see the path.
Okay, so let's just play this out. Where we are today do you think 30 days from now, let's start there, Joe Biden is the nominee. Post DNC, the end of August, is he accepted the nomination for the Democratic Party? Wes Donehue, yes or no?
Yes, I'll go with yes. But man, that's a tough one. This is a crazy political year. Crazy stuff's happening.
Okay.
So I've just kind of given up on this kind of stuff because it's the weirdest thing going on. So who knows?
No, listen. I was there until about 4:00 yesterday. Seth Denson, is he the nominee on October 31st?
It's a soft yes, but I'm not betting the farm on it.
Sara Gonzales.
I agree. I mean, when you have Adam Schiff and, Nancy Pelosi calling for him to, well, at least publicly Adam Schiff, I'm not betting the farm, but I think he's going to be it. But man, you never know.
The Rubicon that I can't cross is I get all of these sort of consigliere visits to Rehoboth where they're like, yeah, the family is met. You can't win. But the problem is nobody can figure out the then what. Okay, well, then who is it? Well, we don't know. How do we pull this off? Well, we don't know. And then that's when Biden says, then I can't give it up. That's the Rubicon I can't cross. I cannot. I get them saying to him, here's the polling data. Here's the groups that you're losing to. Here's what it's doing to the ticket. And Joe Biden, again, I think this would be he finally says, fine, uncle, I give up. But then he says, okay, tell me who's the person that's going to replace me, and tell me how we do that. And they go, well, we don't know, and we don't know how we do it. And then he says, forget it then. I gotta press forward. I cannot get past that, guys. And that's, yeah.
Sorry. I was just going to say, I also want to add to that if Joe Biden steps down because of health complications from the campaign, he would have to step down as president right now.
Does he?
Right? Like, well, I mean, doesn't that make sense if they're saying, well, it's complications of COVID or whatever the case may be? How can you say, I'm totally fine to run the country right now, but I'm not going to be fine in 5 months? I don't understand how they make that work.
But this goes back to Wesley's point. I think that at his age, he could say, hey, look, I've had conversations with my doctors based on the implications that this COVID could have on my long-term well-being. I don't want to chance it. Right. I think that there's an off ramp. God bless him. I hope that he recovers. Right. But politically, just putting that hat on, I think that he could say, I've spoken to the doctors. There's an X factor and I don't want to chance it for the sake of this country. And I think everyone would give him the off ramp. They're not going to, they'll say, okay, go for it.
Sean, to Sarah's point though, remember, this is a president who is all about his legacy. And first of all, he still has the wherewithal to know, if I'm gonna lose, I don't want my swan song to be that I lost. My swan song could instead be that I stepped down for the greater good of the country. Oh, and by the way, put the first female African-American president in place. Period. I'm in the history books as giving that, and now I'm out.
And by the way, that could be an off-ramp to get rid of Kamala too, because she gets to serve as first female president for a few months, and then they can buy her off and promise her some cushy gig somewhere else and just not run. I mean, if they're throwing things
I've
out
said
there.
this. he is the king of identity politics, right? I've said this. I mean, this was literally the basis of my book, Radical Nation, which is that he wants to be the progressive North Star and all these appointments. Him being able to say, I appointed the first female black woman president, he would go down in history on the left. That's it. I mean, all right. Any final thoughts or predictions before we wrap?
I predict a lot of chaos for the next 5 months.
That's a pretty good prediction.
Right. That's yeah. Although I think tonight's going to be fantastic. I'm excited to
Yes.
hear Hulk Hogan, by the way. All right, guys, thanks for joining us. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.